Hi, y'all. We are on chapter 19 of this great, amazing book, The Landmark History of the American People. And so we are going to read that together today. So we are on, it's always hard because it's that first page. It doesn't have a good page number, but it's 126, chapter 19. And we've got a picture here. I love seeing the pictures from the olden days. It's so cool. By 1896, when Congress adopted rural free delivery, postmen began to deliver letters and packages directly to farmers' mailboxes. You can't imagine what that would feel like how amazing it would be to actually get mail at your house. The framers of the federal Constitution in 1787 gave Congress the power to establish post offices and post roads. A post road was a main road with special stations to provide fresh horses for the riders who carried the mail. For some years, almost all postal service was on one main post road along the Atlantic coast. People used the mail very little. When George Washington was president, letters in the mail averaged less than 1 for every 12 Americans each year. That's crazy. In those early years, the person who received a letter usually paid the postage. If he did not want to pay the postage, he never got the letter. Of course, there was no home delivery. To get your mail, you went to the post office. Even after Philadelphia, and this was the case for me when I lived in Turkey, we didn't get our mail at our house. We'd go to the post office and we would unlock our box and we'd get our mail. And in college, it often worked that way too. There's times like that in America that it still works that way, apartments and things. To get your mail, you had to go to the post office. Even after Philadelphia had a population of 150,000 people, everyone in the city who wanted his mail had to wait in line at the post office. And when you think about it, that would be a much easier way to do it, right? The mail comes into one spot and you just sort it. Then in 1825, the dim beginnings of modern mail delivery began. The post office gave postmasters in every town permission to hire mail carriers to deliver letters to people's homes. The carriers still received no government salary. They lived by collecting a small fee from anyone to whom they delivered a letter. If you were not at home to pay, they would not leave your letter in your mailbox. By the 1840s, the growing country desperately needed a cheap and efficient postal service. The government service was still so haphazard, kind of unorganized, and expensive that there was widespread demand to abolish the post office. People called it an odious monopoly and said that private businesses could do much better. As a result, in 1845, Congress passed a law establishing cheap postage, and it tried to reform the whole system. At first, each postmaster printed his own stamps, but that led to chaos. Then in 1847, the reformed Post Office Department issued the first national postage stamps, a 5-cent stamp showing the head of Benjamin Franklin and a 10-cent stamp with the head of George Washington, as shown above. I remember when I was a kid that postage stamps were 22 cents. That was the first number that I remember a postage stamp being. And I'm trying to even remember what they are now. I have to look it up. Is it 40 something? I think it is. So there you go. You've got the 2 that they started using. Now the person who mailed the letter would pay the postage. Some people objected. They said if a person really wanted to receive a letter, the least he could do was pay the postage. Before postage stamps, people would simply fold their letters and write the address on the outside. But now letters became more private because everyone began to use envelopes that they could seal. With the growth of the railroads just before the Civil War, it was possible to carry the mail much faster than on horseback or by stagecoach. But when a train arrived at a railroad station and dropped several large bags of mail, someone had to sort it, and that caused annoying delays. And then in 1865, the railway mail service began using specially designed railway cars to sort the mail while it was in transit. There were still problems of how to pick up mail from small towns along the track where the trains did not even stop for passengers. But a clever new gadget, the mail bag catcher, enabled the speeding train as it passed to snatch a bag of mail hanging beside the track. And there's kind of a pictures of it here, right? 2 pictures show how catching posts on the side of the rail line enabled trains to keep moving, though at somewhat reduced speeds, and yet pick up mail along the way. Color print shows the mail bag as the mail car approaches and the bag is about to be caught. And the second print shows the bag just as the catcher is pulling it from the post. It takes a lot for a train to stop, right? So they don't want to stop the whole way. Postage stamps, too, became a way of bringing Americans together. The pictures on stamps reminded the nation of its heroes, like Franklin and Washington, and told of great events, past and present. The first commemorative series of American postage stamps appeared in 1893, at the time of the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. 16 large stamps in different denominations showed scenes of Columbus and the discovery of America. In 1938, the Post Office issued a complete set series of presidents. From the very beginning, the post office had a rule against the use of images of persons still alive. Okay, so they'd only use presidents who had passed away. Even after postage stamps were introduced, at first they paid for delivery only as far as the post office. They did not include delivery to the person's home. About the time of the Civil War, when private letter-carrying businesses were delivering mail to the home address on their envelope, they were often speedier than the post office mail. The post office began to provide the same service only to compete with them. Finally, in 1863, Congress provided a regular salary for letter carriers. They took the mail from the post office and delivered it to the home address. This service was available only in cities. By 1887, a city had to have at least 10,000 people to be eligible for free home delivery. But most Americans still lived on farms or in small towns. As late as 1890, nearly 3/4 of the people in the United States never received a letter unless they went to the post office to collect it. The old-fashioned system had its points. People did not receive junk mail they didn't want. The general storekeeper was commonly the village postmaster. When the post office was in a corner of the general store, between the dry goods and the farm tools, there, too, farmers would enjoy meeting friends from the whole countryside who would come in for their mail. You've probably seen this if you watched Little House on the Prairie or something like this, how they got their mail. But it was also a nuisance. Farmers never received mail unless they came to town. They were out of touch with the news. No wonder farmers had a reputation for being out of date and a little old-fashioned. By 1889, a go-getting department store pioneer from Philadelphia, John Wanamaker, became Postmaster General. He decided it was time for a change. The whole nation would profit if all Americans, not just city dwellers, had mail delivered to their mailboxes at their house. Wanamaker's plan would finally bring the mail to the farmers. He called it Rural Free Delivery, or RFD for short. RFD became the farmers' battle cry, and there really was a battle. On one side were farmers who wanted mail-order catalogs, mail-order packages, and newspapers delivered to their doors. They wanted to be in touch with the world every day. On the other side were the village storekeepers. They wanted to keep the farmers coming into their stores to get their mail, because then they would buy stuff, right? If it became too easy to shop by mail, the farmers might buy all their goods from Sears and Ward's, and country stores would lose their customers. At the same time, in the 1890s, many American farmers in the West were suffering from drought and hard times. Farmers were organizing in their Grange clubs, which had supported Ward's, which is one of the mail-order catalogs, and in their populist political party. And many city people, too, wanted to help farmers, especially if they could do so in some way that would help make the cities prosper. In 1896, Congress adopted RFD, and in one of the great American organizing achievements of the 19th century, which was the 1800s, the post office laid out 9,000 new routes in 1 year. The Postmaster General approved the design for a standard rural mailbox, and that design ever since has served as the trademark of country life. RFD helped open the world to farmers. Now when they ordered from Sears and Ward's, their goods came promptly by RFD. Soon farmers insisted on and received the latest styles and the newest improvements. Farmers were no longer back numbers as they used to be called. Now at least they shared with other Americans all the news of the world. When their only way of receiving mail had been weekly trips to the village, no sensible farmer would subscribe to a daily newspaper. A farmer didn't have time to go into town every day. They had to farm. They had to do their work. Who wanted an armful of stale newspapers once a week? But now newspapers could come to the farmer's mailbox every day. In 1911, RFD delivered over 1 billion newspapers and magazines. And then they got some pictures of commemorative stamps down there. And so that is everything in chapter 19. And I'm not going to go over the questions, but I did want to tell Zoe that Congress adopts rural free delivery in 1896 should go on her timeline. And I'm going to have some cool videos for you for this too. At least one. Not sure exactly how many. See you soon.